This is the Callisto Protocol. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here on, well, the Series S? It's 1440p at 30 FPS, and it does actually seem to be decently stable, which makes sense with the frame rate only being 30 FPS. And it's a temporal resolution scaling technology deployed as well. There is HDR support. And yeah, it still looks really genuinely impressive. I have a lot of complaints about the game, and we'll dive into that. I mean, you might have seen my Series X review on the title. But if you haven't and you're just looking at the Series S, things to highlight, the character models, absolutely incredible. And again, the visual fidelity on the Series S is really, really good. This game does an excellent job with the character performances. I do wish the characters were a little bit more, than one-dimensional, but yeah, it does visually look really, really good. And there's a good sense of gore and violence and whatnot to the game. So let's dive into what this experience is. This is very much a spiritual successor to Dead Space. So I don't think it really hits the mark or comes close to the quality that Dead Space was. I think this is actually one of the worst games I've ever played. And, it's gonna definitely get some complaints and whatnot, but it's not one of the worst games I've ever played in terms of, like a technical perspective. I wouldn't say it's necessarily perfect on, say, Series X side of things, but Series S, not too bad, looks pretty good. Keeps that fidelity quite a bit, doesn't look too murky and whatnot, and I would like if they added a 60 FPS mode down the road. I think that would be a very, very good addition to the Series S side of things, because there obviously is room for, resolution dipping and whatnot. At least I think so. So it's bad in terms of the gameplay, the story, and the style of this game. That is a lot of my complaint. Is just the overall experience is just painful. Traumatic is a word that I would use to describe my experience playing this game. And your mileage is going to vary, but I do recommend that if you do, not heed my warning and you decide to jump in and play this game, that you do with the easy difficulty, because it's grueling hard for no reason. Even easy is pretty brutal, and it doesn't really seem like there's much of a difference between easy and normal difficulties. And I would suggest maybe auto-aim, auto-dodge, and maybe melee assist, not for bosses though, because it locks on too much. So, yeah. Now, you might get some things where it's like, oh, you just don't know about dodging, or oh, you're just not smashing stuff. No, I definitely tried my best at the dodging mechanics. They never seemed to really work for me. The checkpoints are absolutely insanely brutal and annoying, where you have to do the same repetitive pipe work. Like, if I die right here, I have to do the entire segment of what I've just done, and it's just exhausting. I spent an hour and a half in a hallway trying to go through it, and it's like, shoot the tentacles, but it's like they don't give you ammo because the game's got like a random generation for ammo that you get or resources you get. And I was constantly starved of ammo and health, and it was just, again, a very traumatic, annoying, lengthy experience that felt as though it was never going to end. It's just like the enemies are just way too meaty, and it just takes forever. The loading is really, really fast, though. And it does have some neat scenic moments. There's a nice snow area. There's these huge ranges of different places you go across a several-hour story. Obviously I took longer because I spent an hour and a half in a hallway. But, yeah, to me, it's just absolutely exhausting to play. It was not fun. I didn't have a good time with it. And it was just a brutal play. So I do personally feel that this is quite an awful experience. And it's a tiring one. Like, it runs. Obviously it runs. And there are some elements that are, like, pretty cool, like the visuals. But it's got that, like, next-gen, current-gen shine without the substance behind it. You know, in terms of the story, you're supposed to care about certain characters, but you barely know them. It's kind of a happenstance situation, and I was more interested in the lore and the setup of the mystery and the story of kind of what would happen after this game is done more than anything. And it's just kind of weird because it also doesn't really, I guess you would say, feel like a standalone kind of thing, if that makes sense. It definitely feels like they want to build this out more from this particular title, not even sequel-wise. And that was a little kind of annoying because I like stories that are a little self-contained to a degree. And it's just like, it's a really brutal melee combat system. I would have liked more of an emphasis on actual being able to use guns, or if gunplay wasn't pushed as much, that you could, you know, have more of a balance for how you attack enemies. You know, limited resources and enemies take a little bit, but it just felt like there wasn't that balance here. And then you've got like this ridiculously powerful ability to kind of like, you know, telekinesis throw items. And yeah, it just like instantly kills things. But then you're sitting there mulching enemies like with your melee over and over and over and over again, and that doesn't seem to do really much damage at all. Same with your bullets, do practically nothing. I was joking that I was mildly inconveniencing the folks I was going up against. And it's just, yeah, and it gets tiring with the death animations and the gameplay. It's not a good time. It's, you know, kind of one of those things where if there was a game I really would not recommend, it would be this one. And I try to find a good balance when I do my reviews and I do my videos. I mean, if you've seen other ones, I do my best to find a balance. And, you know, occasionally I don't like everything. And this is one of those games where I sat there, I streamed it all, I put in the time, and I do not like this game. I don't think it's good, I don't think it's worth playing, and I felt it to be honestly, emotionally traumatizing. And I just, you know, again, it's going to be some opinions and whatnot, but it really was a lot of, let's crawl through vents, let's slide through this. Let's have, you know, these interesting characters in terms of gorgeous, like, cinematic design and stuff. And let's just do, you know, nothing with them in terms of, like, their development and whatnot. Like, obviously, you know, this guy here, he's got a bit of a, I don't know, hidden mysterious path kind of thing. But, like, his comrades, I just really never quite cared about. I never really got to know them that well. And it was just kind of weird how into the other individuals he was in was, you know, kind of how he felt about them, considering they're in like a prison of prisons almost. What the? How did you get back in here? That's what I'm saying though. It's just like, it's just tiring to deal with it. Like, sure, you know, the violence and stuff, it's cool, it's gory, it's crazy. But it's just not really satisfying to kill enemies. Like, normal difficulty for a game should be, you know, kind of your baseline. A little bit of a challenge, but something that anyone could jump in and could play it. And if normal's too hard, I should very easily be able to slide onto easy difficulty and just smoothly move through the game and not have problems. That's how difficulty should be handled. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you know, I'm loving this kind of thing. Because I really don't. I just, like, I wanted to go through and enjoy this for the atmosphere. Because I do think, you know, lights-wise, atmospherics-wise, it's cool. But it's also not really scary. There was never a point where I was scared of it. So it's more of like an action game than anything else. And I think that's ultimately quite disappointing. Because when you think of something like Dead Space, which is very, very much trying to be Dead Space, let's be real here. You know, you think of tension, you think of horror, you think of scares, you think of unsettling moments where you're like, oh, what's happening? Or moments of terror as you move through these different rooms, and you never feel that. Or at least I never felt that. You know, it looks cool, again, like the lighting, the setups, what they've got, you know, designed here looks neat. But there's just no sense of that to you because you're sitting there just mulching through enemies in, kind of awkward spaces that aren't quite designed for the types of enemies you're facing. There are some creative elements to it, but it still didn't feel quite to the metric that I was really hoping for in terms of something where I felt creeped out, I felt unsettled. It just really didn't come to be, and I was more just kind of tired after a while of doing all of this stuff. Which I think is a big shame, because the potential to do something really, really cool with this is so well there that I was just kind of like, well, why aren't you, kind of hitting that full potential? It's really, really disappointing to me, because this game could have been so much more, especially with the quality design and stuff they were going with. It's weird. It really feels like an awkward, disjointed kind of mess. And going back to the rooms and the character or enemies and the setup for those rooms being awkward, I felt that a lot with one of the bosses. So they've got this cool two-headed boss, but you fight it 4 times basically in a row. And it's exhausting because it moves in such an awkward way where it kind of like basically teleports its claw thing through like a wall to kill you. And it just, like a lot of enemies in this game, they feel kind of cheap in terms of how they hit you, or how they deal damage to you, or how many there are in a confined space. And it just continues to beat down on you, especially with these long boss fights that go on and on and on excessively. There needs to be more balancing with the gameplay. That's a big thing and a big point that I try to get to, is that, it looks good, but it doesn't play good, and it doesn't feel fun or engaging to play. I never enjoyed this game. After a couple hours, I was just tired of it, and I sat there, there's a grueling 10.5-hour mess, having a terrible time. And it's that balance, that feels off again, where you've got this cool ability to pick out enemies and throw them, and it's just like, well, they feel like nothing. But then if you try to go and melee them, it's like crunch, 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 dodge, 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 crunch, crunch, crunch. And I never really felt as though the dodging mechanic felt very like engaging or interesting or something I really felt like I ever mastered. It's kind of awkward. And, I think for some maybe they get it well and whatever. I don't care. I'm doing my thoughts. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I'm just trying to really give fair warning for those looking at this title, whether you're doing so on the Series X or the Series S, that while it may look good, it's just not a good time. And we've had how many great games that feel similar to this that I think do a much better job and provide a much better experience. And again, don't make me sit there in a hallway for an hour and a half dying as I try desperately to get past it. It's a bit weird. Like, I wanted to like this. I had high aspirations going into it. I was like, oh great, this is kind of an experience I've been wanting to play. But you sit there, and it's also tedious. So to heal, your character has to like go down on his knees and heal. There's no quick healing or anything like that. It takes a while. So you can't do it while you're in combat. You can barely do it when you're out of combat. So you're basically stuck with whatever health you have in the situation. You could have these like long sequences where there's tons of enemies. And it just gets tiring. There's 3D printers to improve your stuff, but I never felt, again, like I had the credits or the stuff to sell to get credits, and I looked around too. I tried to look off the beaten path, and there's not really much of it off the beaten path. This is a very, very linear, straight-through game. There's not a lot of room for exploration anywhere. And when you do try to explore, you just get slapped for it. Like, it's just brutal 99% of the time if you veer off, even a little bit. For those areas that do exist, and it's just not even worth wasting your time on, to be honest. But that's the thing, is it's just like I felt so starved for ammo and health the entire time. It's just absolutely exhausting and tiring. And then you've got this sort of thing where it's like, again, I love the character models. They look so good, especially like the facial stuff, cinematics and gameplay wise. Very, very well done. See, like, I think this one really cleanly kind of delivers on that 1440p. Just, again, wish 60 FPS was present. Sorry, but going back to what I was saying, it's just like it's a game of tedious effort. It takes forever to smash things. It takes forever to heal. It even takes forever to reload, or even shift and switch your gun. Because you get different attachments to your gun, and it takes a long time to get different attachments for your gun, like, or to get a better gun. They basically give you the better weapons when the game is over. And it's so frustrating that you have to wait so long to get, you know, basic items. And it's tiring. You know, at the end of the game, you got some more souped up weapons, but it's basically over. So it's like, what's the point of this? And then your character kind of like reattaching the gun or reloading. There were so many times where my character just did not reload or did not switch his weapons or did not do this or did not do that. And it's tiring. And your manual saves, not even manual saves really, they just go back to that previous checkpoint where again, the checkpoints can be so brutal and just tiring and hard to deal with. Which I think sucks, because it's just like, you know, I just want to kind of get in and, you know, have fun and play this game. So I almost need an enjoyable mode option or something like that. Or, you know, something where the combat's done a little bit differently, I would like. Or, you know, something where it doesn't feel like a chore to play. It doesn't feel fun to play. I don't really ever want to revisit this game. I genuinely do not. A sequel? I really don't know if I would be able to handle it if the gameplay doesn't look like it's changed at all. Because I think the universe is kind of neat, but, you know, it's not something that feels like it really hit the mark for what I had hoped. You know, I wanted something with a bit of terror to it. I wanted something with a bit of fear. I wanted something that would surprise me and give me cool twists and tell a cool story and, you know, do some neat stuff. And I feel like this one didn't do that for me. I feel like this one really, really just disappointed. I didn't even have insanely high standards going into this one. You know, I honestly didn't. I expected a very average, okay experience. And I didn't think that I'd be sitting there so tired and so beat by the end of it and so just like dissatisfied with the storytelling and the characters and the, you know, because it's just like the same enemies, it's the same environments, and it's the same the whole way through. And it takes, you know, a decent amount of time, I guess, but it's not like there's necessarily replay value for those wanting that, which is fine. I'm okay with the story that ends and you move on. There's going to be a New Game Plus post-launch, I guess, so if you want to replay it for whatever reason, you know, that's going to be an option. But I'm mostly just trying to be like, hey, you know, fair warning, you know, this is what the game is like. This is what to expect. You know, and I did kind of, you know, want it to be good. I don't really go into playing a game with, you know, wanting it to be bad. I kind of like to enjoy games. You know, I want to have a good time. And it's just, like, ultimately so frustrating to me that this was kind of how it all went. Did we go this way? Anyways, it doesn't matter. But I think... I found it awful. I really genuinely did not like this game. I didn't have fun with it. I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend staying away from it. And I think there's other titles that are similar to it that do a better job. And that is the biggest shame, is that this one had basically open potential going in for it. And then the end results just... failed to hit the mark for me. That's the biggest thing. I hated the Callisto protocol. I wouldn't suggest the Callisto protocol. But I do appreciate the visual technology of it. I hope Series S gets a 60 FPS mode down the road. because I think that would benefit it a lot. And just be careful when you're looking at this one interest-wise, and really think about if it's something for you or if it's something you won't like.